Mozart. The Toddler Pianist. Little Mozart walked into the château in Salzburg, Australia, followed by his two small children. "I'd like to sign my daughter's Nero up for music lessons. She is 8 years old, and I already believe she has quite a talent for music," he said to his organist. The organist, Anton, smirked a bit, for they knew how Leopold could boast about the children. "So when will you be signing up the little boy?" Anton asked. Leopold laughed at the joke, for little Wolfgang was only 3 years old, not for at least 5 years. "I think 8 is certainly young enough." Little Wolfgang's fingers would barely be able to stretch over the keys. The organist promised to sign Nero up. Before Leopold left, the organist called Nero over to the church piano. "Come, I will give you a beginner lesson," he said. Nero ran over to her father, and Wolfgang totally happily after her. "Me too, Papa, me too," he cried. No, Wolfgang, you are too small," said his father. "Pianos are not meant for little folks to touch, so please go outside and play." Wolfgang turned around obediently. If his father had seen the disappointed look on little Wolfgang's face, it would have broken his heart. Wolfgang went outside and played near the doors of the church, but his every thought was on the piano. After Nero and finished, Wolfgang and Leopold went to speak with the organist again. Wolfgang crept up to the piano and put his little hands on the keyboard. He began to play the simple scales he had heard of his big sister practicing. The sound entranced him, and he played the scales over and over, playing them exactly right. He forgot everything else. He did not notice his father and sister standing behind him. He didn't even hear his father shouting for the organist to come see. He was completely wrapped up in the music. He began changing the scales, even inventing simple tunes of his own. Leopold started at his young son Wolfgang. The boy was a musical prodigy, a child wonder. Mozart played music as naturally as he breathed. When he was 4 years old, it took him only half an hour to learn a difficult piece of music that was written down. If he heard a piece, even if he heard it only once, he could memorize it instantly. When Wolfgang was 5, Leopold and a friend came to find him, bent over a piece of paper and writing big black notes, smearing and splattering ink everywhere. "Wolfgang, what are you doing spoiling the nice, clean paper?" his father asked. "Papa, I'm writing a concerto," Mozart said, his father's eyes shining. His father picked up the paper and laughing, but soon his amusement turned to amazement. It was a concerto imposed for several instruments. He could see that the notes were correct, despite the smears and blotches. But Wolfgang, the music would be too difficult for anyone to play, he said. "Oh no, it will only take some practice, see. It goes like this," said Wolfgang. and he ran to the piano. He placed his smudged paper on the music stand and began to play. His father's friend had been laughing. He'd assumed Leopold was just playing along with Wolfgang, but now he saw that the child was the true wonder. You ought to travel with him, the friend suggested. He should be playing for emperors, for king and queens. Perhaps I will, said his father. The following year, when Wolfgang was only 6 years old, he and Netherell started on tour. Whenever Wolfgang went to play, people would giggle at him. He was too small compared to the big piano, and his feet couldn't even touch the floor. But when he began to play, the audience fell silent. His playing was perfect and beautiful. The first place they went to play was in Vienna, the capital of Austria. On the way, they stopped to visit a monastery in a little town. There was a great pipe organ in the chapel. I want to play on it, Wolfgang said. Papa explained the pedals to me. Wolfgang's father helped his son onto the high stool. He was too small to even operate the pedals, so he walked across them instead. The music poured out of the chapel, growing more and more powerful. The monks, who had been at dinner, rushed into the room. Because Wolfgang was too small, the monks could not see him, and they thought the organ was playing itself. It's an angle, they cried. Such music must come over heaven. Wolfgang was also very charming. Everywhere they went, people were smitten with this little musician. The customs officials asked him why he came to Vienna. I can't play the piano, he said. Why, you are no bigger than a chicken. You can't be old enough to play anything but a whistle. I'll show you, Wolfgang said. He asked the official to open the box containing his piano, and the little boys began to play right in the costumes house. A crowd gathered around in awe. The head of costumes immediately gave the order to let the Mozart family through without difficulty. After playing in Vienna, Wolfgang was invited to spend the day with the royal children. One of the princes was the famous Marie Antoinette, who was just a little girl about Wolfgang's age. Wolfgang liked her very much. She took him around the palace to show him all the wonderful riches. He was not used to such smoothly polished floors, and he slipped and fell. All the children laughed except Marie. After she held him up, Wolfgang said, "When I am a man, I will marry you." The princess servant gasped. Then Wolfgang put his arms around Mary and gave her a big kiss. "Dreadful," cried the servant, for it was never ever allowed for a common person to touch royalty. But Mary only laughed, took Wolfgang's hand, and gave him a kiss back. The poor young man, Wolfgang, his father, and his sister toured all around Europe. Wolfgang's game grew, and he became a very handsome young man. But unfortunately, the life of a musician did not play well. People were less impressed with his play as he got older. After all, 6 years old musician was a marvel. but 20-year-old musician was nothing new. For his entire adult life, Wolfgang Mozart was very poor. Once a friend came to visit him and found Wolfgang and his young wife waltzing around their apartment. They were not dancing for joy. They were dancing to try and keep warm, because they could not afford food. Wolfgang's wife, Constance, was often ill. They also had little children to take care of. Everyone agreed that his music was wonderful, but writing, selling, and playing music did not bring in much money. The Requiem. One day, when Mozart was 36 tall, a stranger dressed in gray pounded on his door. Without saying a word, he handed his door. Without saying a word, he handed Mozart an envelope. Inside was some money and an order for Mozart to write a requiem. Nothing in the envelope and whom it was for. It is for myself, Mozart said to Constance. I feel it in my heart. She laughed. He was only 36, and it was silly for him to talk of dying. The truth was, the requiem had been ordered by a count. He wanted to play the music of his wife's funeral, but he wanted to say that he had written it himself. But Mozart didn't know this. Wolfgang began writing. He wrote feverishly, staying up all night, sometimes even forgetting to eat. The work exhausted him, and he began to grow weak. Mozart had been making a little money by teaching music students, but now he was so wrapped up in the requiem that he cancelled all of his classes. Without money, the family couldn't afford much food. They couldn't afford candles to light their cold house at night. But still, Mozart wrote, growing weaker and weaker. Finally, just before finishing the requiem, Mozart died. It truly had been his own requiem, the greatest musician who ever lived. Mozart is still considered the greatest musician who ever lived, but when he died, his family was so poor they could not purchase a gravestone. Eventually, no one could remember where he had been buried today. There is a great monument to Mozart in Vienna, and on it is an inscription reading, "The probable site of his grave." Mozart's music is still played today. He wrote such famous operas as The Marriage of Figaro and The Magic Flute, and the piano piece Ein kleine Nachtmusik, which means little night music in German. You may not have heard of these pieces of music, but if you heard them being played, you might recognize them. Mozart music is used everywhere. You can hear it in a concert hall, or you can hear it in cartoons. He wrote many of his most famous pieces when he was only a little older than you are, and he died while he was still young. Imagine the wealth of music we might have if he had only lived